My name is Shen Yu, but inside the archive, they call me the Raven Archivist. I collect the cases that official reports could never fully explain. Missing people, forgotten villages, closed roads, old photographs, witness statements, names that appear where they should not exist. Most people call them ghost stories. I call them files. And tonight, I am opening one of them for you. Welcome to the Raven Files. Tonight's file came from a mountain region in western Hunan. There is no case number on the cover, no police seal, no official chain of custody. Only 3 objects were found with it: a hand-drawn map, a dried silver-gray leaf, and 4 words written in black ink. Do not open the jars. The statement inside was written by Qiao Muyu, a young geomancer from the Fengmen tradition. She claimed she had seen a village that appeared on no government map, a place where the living worked beneath the sun and the dead walked after dark. Local police found no such village, but 3 months later, a forestry survey team discovered dozens of enormous clay jars deep in the mountains. They had been arranged in the shape of a broken Bagua diagram. Every jar was empty, except one. Inside it was a cell phone that was still ringing. This is Qiao Muyu's account, and this is the Black Jar file.
My name is Qiao Muyu. I was 21 years old, a second-year student at Nanjiang University, and the last living heir of Fengmen. Most people would have called me a Feng Shui practitioner. That description was not wrong. It was simply incomplete. Fengmen did not exist to decide where someone should place a desk, which day was lucky for a wedding, or whether a house faced the right direction. A true geomancer studied the way mountains trapped wind, the way rivers carried energy, the way soil preserved traces of the living and the dead. My grandfather once told me that land had memory. It remembered blood. It remembered names spoken at graves, and sometimes it remembered debts that human beings had spent generations trying to forget. The case began near the end of June. At 11:47 one night, I received a call from Liu Zhenkai, the owner of a Hong Kong transportation company. Months earlier, I had helped his family investigate a damaged ancestral burial site. During the excavation, the body of Liu's father had changed. The corpse had not fully decomposed. Its joints still moved. Its nails had hardened into dark, curved points. Before we could restrain it, it injured 7 people. The wounds were shallow, but the symptoms that followed were not. Their skin became cold. Their joints stiffened. At night, they heard knocking from inside walls, closets, and locked rooms. According to the oldest Fengmen records, they had been exposed to corpse poison, not a biological toxin. Not exactly. It was a form of cold yin corruption that moved through blood and memory at the same time. If it reached the heart meridian, there was no reliable cure. But before that stage, it could sometimes be treated with a plant called returning yang grass. The herb grew only in places where a corpse had been nourished by the land, but where the soil had not yet become completely dead. Liu Zhenkai had sent people into western Hunan to search for it. None of them returned. That night, his voice sounded dry and exhausted. "Qiao Muyu," he said. "I woke up in a locked room last night." "What happened?" "There was writing on the mirror." "What did it say?" He hesitated. 41 days remain." I said nothing. The wound on his shoulder had appeared 8 days earlier. 8 plus 41 made 49. In traditional corpse-nurturing systems, 49 days marked a complete yin cycle. Whoever had written that message understood exactly what was happening inside Liu Zhenkai's body. I agreed to go west. The person traveling with me was Jiang Haoran. Haoran was a final-year architecture student and captain of the university basketball team. He was nearly 6'2", physically strong, calm under pressure, and unusually gifted with spatial memory. He could walk through a building once and later sketch its hallways, structural walls, exits, and drainage paths with remarkable accuracy. In places with abnormal layouts, that skill could be more useful than any talisman. Haoran had spent almost a year asking me to accept him as a student. I had not agreed, but I kept taking him on cases. Officially, he carried equipment. Unofficially, I trusted him. The Liu party included 6 people exposed to corpse poison. Their symptoms were not the same. Liu Zhenkai had suffered the deepest wound. The scratch on his left shoulder refused to close. Under the skin of his neck, he often felt something moving slowly toward his chest. Xu Yangsong, an elderly feng shui consultant, had lost sensation in both feet. He could step on broken glass without realizing it. Gao Wenli, Liu's secretary, suffered spasms in her fingers. After sunset, her hands sometimes closed around empty air, as though she were gripping an invisible throat. Dr. Tong Shu-chin remained mentally clear, but she kept hearing her dead father calling her name from sealed spaces, ventilation shafts, car trunks, wardrobes. The remaining 2 were company managers named Luo Cheng and Peng Rui. Luo Cheng had begun forgetting ordinary words. Sometimes he stared into a mirror and could not remember his own name. Peng Rui had a black vein running from his wrist toward his elbow. Every day, it grew by the width of one finger joint. Traveling with them was Zhao Mingyuan, Liu's security chief, a former soldier, quiet and capable, and at the time, someone we all believed we could trust. Before leaving Hong Kong, I removed most of the group's unnecessary luggage. I gave everyone a red baseball cap and told them that once we reached Hunan, we would pose as a scenic survey party. Haoran glanced at the caps. Why red? In heavy mountain fog, the living need a way to recognize one another, and if the thing wearing the red cap isn't alive? I looked at him. Then don't call its name. We reached Biancheng County around noon. The first local driver refused to take us anywhere near the Gaoi region. The second demanded triple payment, then stopped at the foot of the mountains and would go no farther. At a noodle shop near the bus station, we met a group of art students preparing to sketch in the countryside. One of them was a thin young woman named Wu Jingyi. The moment she heard us mention Gaoi village, her chopstick slipped from her hand. "You're going there?" she asked. I watched her carefully. "You know the village?" She shook her head too quickly. "No, I've only heard old people talk about it." "What do they say?" She looked toward the front of the shop. An elderly woman was sitting outside, selling dried incense. "They say the village has 123 people during the day." Wu Shini lowered her voice. "And 123 people at night." She paused. "But they aren't the same 123 people." Then she gathered her sketchbook and left with the others. Before I could follow, the group disappeared into the crowd. Police later reviewed the bus station security footage. It showed our party entering the noodle shop. It showed me turning toward the next table and speaking for nearly a full minute. But no art students appeared anywhere on the recording. Wu Xingyi had been sitting in an empty chair when I returned to the table. I found a folded note beneath my bowl. It contained a single sentence. "If every house has a locust tree, do not take the road through the center." That was the first clue. At the time, I did not know that the person who left it had been dead for 3 years. The road into the mountains was worse than expected. We changed vehicles 3 times. Eventually, we rented 5 mules from a small settlement near the last service road. Zhao Mingyuan and another guard returned to town. supposedly to maintain outside communication. Before we separated, Mingyuan transmitted a route update to Liu Zhenkai's office, claiming the party would remain beyond cell coverage for at least 3 days. That message later delayed the missing person alert and gave Wei Juncheng's people time to move us without immediate pursuit. After sending it, he doubled back through a concealed service trail used by Wei's men. The shortcut cut several hours from the mountain crossing and allowed his allies to place him inside the 17th jar before our cart reached Heishui. The rest of us continued on foot. At 6 in the evening, our phones lost signal. At 7, the insects stopped making noise. Just before the last light left the valley, we saw a wooden inn standing alone beside the trail. 2 faded white lanterns hung in front. A massive locust tree covered most of the roof. The main door stood only halfway open. Xu Yan's song went pale. A corpse courier inn? I nodded. Long ago, men who transported bodies back to their home villages stayed in places like that. The right half of the doorway was for the living. The darkness behind the left half was left open for the dead. The owner introduced himself as Ho Guosheng. He was in his 60s and walked with a damaged left leg. An old injury had pulled one side of his face lower than the other, but his eyes were sharp, far sharper than his appearance suggested. He stared at me for several seconds. "You're Qiao Jingshan's granddaughter." I did not answer immediately. Few people outside Fengmen knew my grandfather's name. "You knew him 30 years ago," Ho Guosheng said. "He saved my life. He led us inside." The room held 2 square wooden tables, 1 exposed white bulb, and the bitter smell of dried roots. Hu poured tea into old porcelain bowls. Liu Zhenkai reached for bottled water. Hu's hand stopped in midair. "A guest enters my house and refuses my water." The room tightened. I lifted the bowl and smelled it. Beneath the scent of mountain leaves was a sweet medicinal trace, a sedative root. I took a small sip and held most of it beneath my tongue. Haoran saw me tap the table twice with 1 finger. Danger. He only touched the tea to his lips. The others were tired and thirsty. Most of them drank. I asked Ho Guosheng about returning yang grass. He said he knew a northern slope where it still grew and would take us there in the morning. But while he spoke, his eyes never remained on me. They kept drifting toward the veins in Liu Zhenkai's neck. Then we heard something behind the house. 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Ho stood immediately. Rats, but rats do not knock with the rhythm of human knuckles. I pretended to need the restroom. In the rear hallway, I noticed an old photograph hanging crooked on the wall. It showed a younger Ho Guosheng standing beside a man in a long black coat. Behind them was the entrance to a village. A wooden sign above the gate read Heishui, Black Water. The date in the corner was autumn, 1998. Before I could photograph it, another face appeared in the mirror. A man in his early 30s stood behind me. He was short and broad-shouldered, with narrow eyes and a smile that never reached them. "My name is Ho Ziming," he said. "My father thinks you need rest." I turned. He pressed a cloth over my face. I held my breath, drove my heel into his foot, and pulled away. But the drug and the tea had already begun to work. The hallway tilted. Furniture crashed in the front room. The last thing I heard before losing consciousness was Ho Guosheng's voice. "Do not damage her hands." He paused. "The buyer needs her conscious." I woke on the floor of a wooden cart moving through the mountains. My wrists were tied in front of me. Haoran lay beside me with his eyes closed, breathing evenly. I touched 2 fingers to his wrist. He answered with 2 small movements. Still awake. Ho Ziming drove the cart. Ho Guosheng sat beside him. "Are you sure these are the right people?" Ziming asked. The Qiao heir, 6 carriers of corpse poison, and 1 security man already tied to the Liu family. No mistakes. The last part chilled me. Zhao Mingyuan was no longer traveling with us. So who was the security man already tied to the Liu family, Ziming asked. When will Mr. Wei arrive? Before the waning moon. How much did he promise? Hogua Sheng answered quietly. Enough for the village to survive another 10 years. He did not sound like a trafficker discussing payment. He sounded like a man repeating an oath. The cart traveled through the night. Only later did we learn that the last driver, the mule owner, and the man who had rented us the cart all received payments through shell companies connected to Wei Juncheng. The route had not merely been remote, it had been controlled. Near dawn, we were dragged down in front of a black wooden gate. The sign had been removed, but the old nail marks matched the position of the word Heishui in the photograph. The village sat between 3 mountain slopes. The 4th side faced a narrow river. The houses formed uneven rings. In front of every house stood a locust tree and an enormous clay jar. Each jar was tall enough to reach a person's chest. The lids were made of black wood. A copper nail had been driven through the center of each one. No one came to greet us, but behind curtains and cracks in doors, many eyes were watching. Ho Ziming led us toward a red brick house at the back of the village. As we walked, I counted steps and memorized turns. Haoran stayed close behind me. His eyes moved between rooftops, retaining walls, drainage channels, and changes in elevation. At the 4th intersection, he brushed my elbow and traced a spiral against his palm. He had noticed something. The homes looked randomly placed above ground, but their foundations formed connected arcs, concentric rings. Every drainage channel sloped inward toward the center of the village, instead of down toward the river. That violated every practical rule of mountain construction. In heavy rain, the entire village should have flooded, unless the water was being directed somewhere beneath us. A few minutes later, I understood the larger pattern. The village was not arranged as a normal Bagua formation. It was a reversed containment design. Not meant to keep outsiders away, meant to keep something inside. Haoran noticed even more. In several places, our footsteps produced a deep echo. There was a large hollow structure beneath the road. The village had been built on top of something. Wu Sheni's note had warned us not to take the center road. Ho Ziming was leading us directly through it. As we passed the 17th jar, I heard knocking from inside. 3 knocks, then 2, then 3 again. It was a rescue signal. Someone alive was inside. I stopped. Ziming pulled the rope. Keep moving. What's in the jar? Not your concern. Then why is the lid sealed with copper? His eyes changed. I twisted my wrists, wrapped the loose rope around his hand, and pulled. When he lost balance, I kicked the copper nail free and threw the lid aside. A smell of medicine, mud, and stagnant water rose from the jar. Inside was Zhao Mingyuan. His hands had been tied. His mouth was sealed with tape. His lower body sat in dark green water. Small leeches clung to the inside walls. Each had a faint red line running beneath its body. Zhao Mingyuan, Liu shouted. Mingyuan looked at him. But there was no relief in his eyes, only fear. People appeared from every alley. Not only the elderly, women, young men, and children appeared from the alleys and stood in silence. Hogua Sheng approached with his cane. Qiao Muyu, he said, you opened something that was meant to remain closed. I opened a jar holding a living man. No. He looked at the copper nail on the ground. You removed a lock, then something moved far beneath us. A low vibration passed through the soil, like something enormous turning over in its sleep. At that moment, I believed I had rescued Zhao Mingyuan. Later, I learned that his own allies had placed him in the jar before we arrived. He had not been imprisoned. He had been staged, and the 17th copper nail could not simply be replaced. Each lock had to be driven at sunset, during a specific lunar interval, using blood from the family assigned to guard it. Once removed in the middle of a cycle, it remained open until the following moon. I had broken the lock before sunrise the next day. 5 villagers would die because of what came through it. That was my first mistake in Heishui. And after that, I stopped assuming that opening a prison meant setting the right person free. We were confined in the red brick house. Zhao Mingyuan was pulled from the jar. Ho Guosheng did not tie him again. That was the first detail that troubled me. Mingyuan claimed he had returned to the mountains after our radio stopped responding. He said someone attacked him near a stone bridge. He woke inside the jar. He claimed he had tried to escape 3 times, but every road led him back to the village. The story was clean. Too clean. Every detail arrived in the right order, with nothing uncertain and nothing wasted. Real victims rarely tell a story that neatly. "Where exactly were you taken?" I asked. "Near the stone bridge." "Which bridge?" A pause. "The bridge near the mountain entrance." There had been no stone bridge on our route. I did not confront him, not yet. The villagers took us to the fields that morning. The paddies lay behind the village. The water reached halfway up our calves. We were ordered to plant dark purple seedlings with roots coated in red slime. Liu looked at me. "They actually brought us here to farm—" "No," I said. "They are harvesting something else. Within 10 minutes, Haoran found leeches covering his legs. I used mineral salt and lime from the construction pouch he carried. The leeches curled and dropped. Under sunlight, the red line beneath each body became visible. Xu Yangsong stared at them. Blood thread leeches. You know the species?" He nodded. Old corpse handlers used them to filter corruption from animal blood. They feed, hold the contaminated blood inside, then release it when exposed to a special powder. I examined the edge of the field. Small wooden channels carried runoff toward the village. The villagers did not need our labor. They needed blood-carrying corpse poison. I checked Liu Zhenkai's leg. He was bleeding from several bites and had not felt any of them. The poison had already numbed his peripheral nerves. "Everyone out of the water," I said. "Ho Ziming blocked us. You haven't finished." I lifted a jar containing one of the leeches. "You want these things fully fed. If the carriers collapse too early, or if their poison destabilizes under direct sun, the blood will become useless." I watched his face. "Do you want to explain that to Mr. Wei He froze. Only for a second, but it confirmed that the name I heard on the cart was real. Ziming went to find his father. I pulled Haoran into the shade and pretended to inspect his skin. "Zhao Mingyuan lied," I whispered. "I know," he said. "His boots are too clean, and there are no fresh bites on his legs. He did not spend hours in that water. So his allies placed him there, to make him look like a victim." Haoran glanced toward Mingyuan. He was distributing water to the others with the quiet competence of a loyal guard. "Why? To stop us from trusting our own instincts. The most effective guide is the one everyone already believes." I removed Wu Jini's note from my pocket. The back had been blank, but moisture from the rice field had activated a second line of writing. "Jars are not cells, they are doors." I looked across the village. Dozens of clay jars, dozens of sealed openings. Something existed beneath all of them, and someone had tried to warn me before I ever entered the mountains. By that afternoon, the corpse poison had accelerated. The symptoms no longer appeared separately. They advanced together, Gao Wenli's fingers locked around empty air. She screamed that something invisible was forcing her hands around a man's throat. Dr. Tang Shu-chin heard her father calling from the forest and nearly stepped into a ravine before Haoran stopped her. Xu Yansong walked across a broken piece of pottery and left a trail of blood without noticing. Luo Cheng looked from face to face, then asked me a question in a trembling voice. "What is my name?" The black vein on Peng Rui's arm had passed his elbow. Liu Zhenkai clawed at his neck and said something was moving beneath his skin toward his heart. The pattern became clear. These 6 people had not been chosen only because they were infected. Each represented a different part of human collapse. Sensation, memory, will, blood, recognition, life. Their food had been mixed with indrawing powder. The villagers expected the symptoms to intensify. They needed the blood in its most corrupted state. I told Ho Guosheng that one of the carriers might complete the transformation before midnight. "If that happened," I said, "the scent would wake every corpse buried around the valley." For the first time, real fear crossed his face. "You know what is under the village. I know the formation is failing." I looked toward the 17th jar. "And now one point is open." I demanded permission to search for an emergency stabilizing herb. Ho refused. I told him that if the carriers died before Mr. Wei arrived, the entire operation would fail. That changed his mind. He allowed me into the northern forest. Ho Ziming came with us. I insisted that Haoran carry the equipment. Before leaving the house, Ziming searched my ritual bag. He took almost everything: blades, talismans, powders, thread. But the chalk pouch belonged to Haoran and looked like ordinary construction equipment. He ignored it. He also left my smaller Fengmen field compass. Later, I learned that Wei Juncheng had specifically ordered them not to remove it. The compass was not only my tool, it was the key he needed. We followed the northern ridge. The forest was dense, but almost silent. Claw-like marks had been cut into several locust trees. After half an hour, we found a depression filled with unmarked stone slabs. The soil around them was loose, recently disturbed. Haoran moved the leaves aside with a branch. Red cords connected the slabs beneath the surface. Every cord led toward the village. "Graves?" he asked. "No." I touched the earth. It was unnaturally cold. Anchors? Whatever the village contained was not passive. These burial points drew yin energy from the surrounding dead and tied it back to a central location. At the end of the depression, we found silver-gray plants growing from a crack in the rock. Returning yang grass? But the roots were not attached to normal soil. They had grown through rotted fabric. I pulled the cloth away. A human hand lay beneath it. Only bones remained. On the ring finger was a silver band engraved with 2 letters. W. X. Wu Xingyi. Haoran understood at the same moment I did. The young woman at the noodle shop could not have been alive. Her remains had been in the mountain for years, while Ziming stood several yards away. I quietly broke off 3 roots of returning yang grass. I crushed them between 2 flat stones and mixed the fibers with blood taken from one of the blood thread leeches. The paste turned silver-gray. A faint metallic smell rose from it. Haoran watched without asking questions. He handed me a stick of survey chalk. I packed the mixture into its core and covered it with white powder. If my theory was correct, the compound could force a flow of yin energy to reverse for a short period. But reversing an entire formation required a closed circuit. I needed the people controlling us to lead me through every part of that circuit. Ziming noticed our silence. "Did you find the herb?" I looked at him. "How did she die?" His hand entered his jacket. He drew a short knife. "You know too much." Haoran moved before he could strike. They collided on the slope. I threw lime into Ziming's eyes. He staggered. Haoran trapped his wrist and forced him down. Inside Ziming's jacket, we found a radio, keys, and a photograph of the 6 infected members of our group. The photograph had been taken in Hong Kong before the trip began. On the back, someone had written 6 vessels, 1 geomancer. None may be missing. We had not wandered into a criminal village by chance. The search for returning yang grass had been designed as bait. Ziming laughed through blood on his lip. Who do you think told Liu Zhenkai the herb grew in western Hunan Zhao Mingyuan? No, Mingyuan is only the leash. His smile widened. The message came from Wei Juncheng. Who is he? An old debt owed by the Qiao family. A long howl rose from the village. Not human. The sun had not fully set, but black mist was already moving across the rooftops. Ziming stopped smiling. The 17th lock is open. When we returned, every door in the village had been shut. The copper nails and the jar lids rattled without wind. From beneath the ground came the sound of scratching. It moved from jar to jar. Ho Guosheng stood in the road holding burning incense. When he saw Ziming tied, he did not look angry, only tired. You found the girl. You buried her on the North Ridge. I did not kill her, but you knew. He closed his eyes. 3 years earlier, Wu Jinyi had been an archaeology student. She and several classmates found references to an abandoned Republican-era settlement and entered the mountains. She discovered the underground shrine. She learned that the village was using the blood of people carrying yin corruption to maintain an old system. She planned to contact the police. Wei Juncheng killed her. Then why did she appear at the bus station, I asked. Ho looked at me. Perhaps she did not want another group brought here. I held up the ring. What exactly is beneath the village? He said nothing. The 17th jar cracked. A gray hand pushed through the clay. Then a corpse climbed out. An old man in rotted cloth climbed through the broken clay, mud coating his body and his eyes completely white.
More jars began to fracture. Not every jar contained a body. Some were only vents. But the released energy had awakened the dead buried throughout the valley. Villagers screamed and ran into their homes. Zhao Mingyuan appeared with a handgun. The performance was over. He forced Liu Zhenkai and the others toward an empty jar. Ho Guosheng tried to stop him. Ho Ziming shoved his father aside. We have gone too far to turn back now. Mingyuan aimed at Haoran. Inside, I looked at the jar. It was not filled with water. It was an entrance. We climbed down.
Ho Guosheng followed. Ziming stared at him. Why are you coming? To finish what our family helped begin. Ziming laughed. You are old. Yes. Ho tightened his grip on his cane. Old enough to understand that living longer is not the same as living correctly. The passage beneath the jar was built from black stone, high enough to stand in. Openings in the ceiling connected to other jars above. Red light filtered through the cracks in their lids. The air smelled of blood. Liu Zhenkai walked first. Haoran and I were in the middle. Mingyuan and Ziming followed behind.
Hu Guosheng walked last.
The tunnel divided repeatedly. Wu Shenyi's warning returned to me. Do not take the center road. Mingyuan forced us straight ahead. I began marking the walls with chalk. The signs were not identical. A vertical line, an angled break, a small curve. To anyone else, they looked like route markers. Haoran recognized the pattern. The marks were fragments of a formation. He slowed down and dragged one chalk line from the wall to the drainage groove in the floor. The mixture entered the seam. Now the circuit was not only on stone surfaces. It was entering the structure itself. After 3 turns, we passed the first chalk mark again. Haoran counted under his breath. The distance is wrong. If the tunnel were fixed, we should have been at least 60 yards away, but the slope, the echo, and the position of the drainage groove proved we had returned to the same structural point. The tunnel was not a maze. It was changing shape around us. Then a voice called from behind, "Liu Zhenkai." Liu began to turn. The voice sounded like his father. I covered his mouth before he could answer. "Do not respond to anyone who calls your name." The voice changed. "Jiang Haoran." Then it called me. "Qiao Muyu." The last voice was my grandfather's. "Muyu, come back." For 1 second, my feet stopped. I wanted it to be him badly enough to forget everything I knew. I wanted to believe that somewhere beneath the stone, beyond the dark, my grandfather had been waiting for me all these years. Then I remembered the one detail the thing had missed. My grandfather had never called me Muyu. He called me Yu. I kept walking. The voice laughed behind us. Liu Zhenkai suddenly whispered, "It cannot call me." I looked at him. Tears ran down his face. "I cannot remember my name." For the first time, his symptom protected him. The thing in the tunnel could only imitate a name the victim still recognized as their own. "Doctor," Tang Xiu-Qin listened to the false voice of her father. Then she shook her head. "He never called me Xiu-Qin," she whispered. "He called me Little Tang." The dead were not speaking. Something was reading memory from the surface, but it could not reach the private details beneath it. That gave us a rule, and rules were the only advantage we had. The tunnel ended in a circular chamber. At its center stood a statue. It had the head of a cat, a human face, a body covered in black fur. Its 2 hands held a stone balance. Gold rested on one side of the balance, and a carved heart on the other. 123 niches surrounded the room. Each held a clay figure shaped like someone from the village. Half of the figures had open eyes, half had closed eyes. Ho Guasheng lit an oil lamp. "The figures with closed eyes are dead," he said. Haoran stared around the chamber. "Then what happens at night?" Hao's voice was barely audible. "At sunset, those represented by open-eyed figures fall into a sleep without time. The dead whose figures are closed return to the village until dawn." "They use their own bodies?" I asked. "Not exactly. The shrine gives them temporary form. They walk into their old homes. They speak to their families. Some families pretend not to recognize them. And at sunrise, the dead return below. The living wake with no memory of the missing hours." "What happens if a family speaks to the dead?" Hu's face tightened. "The living begin to lose the memories that prove the person ever died. After enough nights, grief disappears first. Then photographs stop feeling familiar. Eventually, the family accepts the dead as though nothing happened." That explained why some villagers looked at the returning figures with fear, while others looked at them with ordinary affection. It also explained why Rushini's warning had survived only as a note and a ghost. That explained the number, 123 by day, 123 by night. A fixed total. The shrine did not create life. It exchanged positions like a scale. I looked at the statue. "Mao Geshen is not a god with human intention," I said. "It is a mechanism." Ho nodded. "A balance. Whatever is placed on one side, it takes from the other." That single rule explained everything. Fortune, blood, years of life, the exchange between the living and the dead. In front of the statue stood a circular channel. 6 smaller channels fed into it. At the center was an empty slot shaped exactly like my smaller Fengmen field compass. Mingyuan took the compass from me and placed it inside. Nothing happened. Jiming looked at my hands. "It needs her blood." "You do not understand the system," I said. "We only need to follow instructions." A man's voice came from behind the statue. My instructions. Wei Juncheng stepped into the light. He appeared to be around 60. He wore a gray coat, his hair neatly combed, his face composed like that of an ordinary businessman. But there was no shadow beneath him. Liu Zhenkai moved backward. You, Wei smiled. Your father stole land that belonged to my family.
You turned him into that thing. No,
Wei said. His greed did that. I only placed a door in front of him. Then he looked at me. Qiao Muyu, your grandfather sealed Mao Ge-shen with Fengmen blood. Only someone from the same line can release it. What are you trying to exchange? Not fortune. His gaze moved across the clay figures. Death. Wei Juncheng had suffered from an incurable disease. He used money, influence, and ritual systems to delay the end, but delay was not escape. To transfer a death sentence entirely, Mao Ge-shen required 6 carriers of corpse poison, 1 geomancer to open the lock, and 1 living blood relative whose blood could anchor the transfer. I looked at Ho Ziming. He did not understand. Wei turned toward Ho Guosheng. You promised me your son. Ho tightened both hands around his cane. Ziming stared at him. What is he talking about, Ziming? You sold me. I believed he needed blood. Wei laughed. Ho looked at his son. I knew he needed our bloodline. I told myself that was all. I knew there was more. But I chose the lie because the truth left me no way to save you.
that answer was uglier than ignorance, and more human. Wei watched them with satisfaction. Everyone believes they can negotiate with death. Ziming attacked him. Ming Yuan shot Ziming in the leg. He fell into the stone channel. Blood spread through the groove. The statue's eyes opened. All 123 clay figures turned their heads. Then the knocking began. Knock, knock, knock. Wei raised one hand. Begin. I had been waiting for that moment. Returning yang grass grew where yin and yang were still fighting for control. Mixed with blood thread leech blood, it could reverse an energy flow for only a few seconds. The compound hidden inside the chalk had been laid through the tunnel system. Haoran connected those marks to the drainage channels and structural seams, turning scattered symbols into a closed circuit. He understood the buried architecture. I understood the Fengmen formula. Neither of us could have completed the formation alone. By forcing us down the center road, Wei Juncheng had unknowingly guided the reversal circuit all the way to the shrine. Haoran looked at me. I tapped the stone twice with one finger, the same signal I had used at the inn. Danger, move now. I looked at the eastern blood channel. He understood. I stepped onto the smaller Fengmen field compass. At the same moment, Haoran drove his heel into the stone brace controlling the eastern channel. It cracked. The blood spilled into the drainage groove below the floor. The silver-gray mixture ignited through the entire tunnel system. The compass needle spun backward. Blood in all 6 channels reversed direction. Wei's expression changed. What did you do? You were right about one thing, I said. Qiao blood can open the lock. I pressed my bleeding thumb to the compass needle. It can also change who remains inside. The chamber shook. Everyone's shadow stretched across the floor. Everyone's, except Wei Juncheng's. I pointed toward him. You were already dead. Silence. I continued. The living breathe. The infected carry corpse energy. The cursed carry a mark. You have none of them. Ho Guosheng lowered his eyes. 12 years ago, he said, Wei Juncheng died in this chamber. The man in front of us did not move. I remembered the photograph from 1998. He looked almost exactly the same then. Not because he had aged well, because the body before us had stopped aging long ago. Mao Guisheng preserved a pattern of his consciousness, I said. a debt without a body.
Wei smiled. And now I will have one. His true target was not random. Ho Ziming's mother had been Wei Juncheng's youngest daughter. She fled Heishui while pregnant. She later died in an accident Ho Guosheng always believed Wei had arranged. Ho raised the child, hid his bloodline, and spent decades serving Wei because he thought obedience might keep Ziming alive. But Wei had never spared him. He had been waiting for the body to mature. Ziming had not been raised as a son. He had been raised as a vessel. The statue opened its mouth. Black smoke poured out. It wrapped around Wei Juncheng's shape and surged toward Ziming. Ho Guosheng stepped between them. The smoke entered his chest. His body convulsed, but he held Ziming down and refused to let go. Now I shouted. Haoran faced a choice. The stone balance was above him, but Gao Wenli had slipped near the blood channel. For half a second, he looked between them. Then Xu Yansong stepped into the channel. The stone was burning hot. He could not feel it. He grabbed Gao Wenli and pulled her clear. Haoran turned and struck the balance with an iron bar. The gold side shattered. The heart side dropped. The entire chamber tilted. Liu Zhenkai and Tangshu Qin dragged the others away from the channels. I reversed the compass a final time and directed the energy toward the 17th copper nail I had taken from the ground. The metal became red hot. I drove it into the center of Malgation's forehead. The scream that followed did not belong to any human throat. All 123 clay figures cracked at once. In the tunnels above us, the sound of running dead stopped. Wei Juncheng looked at me. His face began peeling apart like burning paper. You think you can imprison me? I am not imprisoning you. I pointed toward the stone channels. You borrowed too much from too many people. The room darkened. I am returning the debts to their owners. Gray threads rose from the niches. A face appeared in each one. Old people, children, travelers, and missing villagers appeared within the gray threads. People whose fortune, health, memory, or years had been taken to sustain the Wei family. The last figure was Wu Jini. She stood behind Wei in the same white shirt she had worn at the noodle shop. She looked at me, then nodded. The dead closed around Wei Juncheng and pulled him into the darkness beneath the statue. The oil lamps went out. The chamber began to collapse. We did not take the center tunnel. We followed the left passage. Wu Sheni's warning had been correct. The center road led into the shrine. The left road followed the underground water toward the river. Ho Guosheng did not come with us. The black smoke inside him had already begun erasing the outline of his body. He held Ziming long enough for Haoran to pull him away. Before the ceiling fell, I heard Ho speak. Do not live like your father. I never knew whether he meant Wei Juncheng or himself. We reached the surface before dawn. The village behind us was covered in fog. The dead were gone. The living emerged from their homes, confused and frightened, as if waking from a long sleep. There were no longer 123 people, only 68. 55 villagers had died over the years, but continued returning after sunset. When the balance broke, they finally left. Zhao Mingyuan tried to escape. Liu Zhenkai did not stop him. Mingyuan reached the village gate before the black handprint on his chest spread across his ribs. He collapsed beneath the empty space where the Heishui sign had once hung. Before dying, he gave me a cell phone. Wei did not call you, he whispered. Then who did? His eyes moved toward the ground. The man in the shrine was only the keeper. He died before he could say more. Police reached us 2 days later. Before they arrived, I returned alone to the edge of the village and counted the bodies near the broken jars. There were 5. I had never met 3 of them. One was a woman whose front door still stood open, a single red shoe lying beside the threshold. The last was an elderly man whose table still held a bowl of untouched rice. Some of the villagers had helped imprison us. Some may have known nothing. The 17th lock had not distinguished between them. Neither could I. Haoran had managed to trigger an emergency locator near the river. Ho Ziming and several younger villagers were arrested for kidnapping and unlawful detention. But when investigators returned to search Heishui, a landslide had blocked the route.
Satellite images showed forest and a flooded valley. No houses, no fields, no shrine, only broken clay jars scattered beneath the mud. The 6 infected survivors were treated with returning yang grass for 7 days. Their symptoms began to reverse. Xu Yansong slowly regained sensation in his feet. Gao Wenli's hands stopped closing around empty air. Tong Shuqin no longer hurt her father. Luo Cheng remembered his name. The black vein on Peng Rui's arm faded. Liu Zhenkai stopped feeling movement beneath his skin. For 2 days, nothing else happened. Police took statements. Heirin reconstructed the underground passages from memory, but his drawing contained an empty space at the center, nearly 6 feet long, broad at the shoulders, narrow near the top. The tunnels curved around it like stone built around a standing coffin. No matter how he recalculated the plan, the shape remained. On our final night in Biancheng, rain fell lightly against the hotel windows. I examined the phone Zhao Mingyuan had given me. There were no contacts, no photographs, and no call history. Only one audio file, 13 seconds long. I played it. First came wind, then Wu Shini's voice. "Qiao Muyu, you closed the wrong door," the recording ended. For nearly a full minute, neither Haoran nor I spoke. He listened again through headphones. At the 11th second, behind Wu Shini's voice, he detected a bronze bell and water moving from left to right. He opened a topographic map. Then he placed his tunnel sketch beside it. The underground river did not end beneath Heishui. It continued southwest, across 3 provinces, then disappeared beneath the Ailao Mountains. That meant the shrine beneath Heishui may not have been the center of the system. It may have been only one lock among many. While we were still studying the map, the phone vibrated. No number appeared. I answered on speaker. A man laughed softly. "Heir of Qiao," he said. "Thank you for opening the road." "Who are you?" "The man your grandfather failed to bury." The call ended. Nothing else happened that night. Just before sunrise, the phone screen turned on by itself. A new photograph appeared. It showed Haoran and me standing inside the underground shrine. The picture had been taken from behind the Mao Ge-shen statue. There was a third person in the image, a man in a long black coat, standing directly behind me. His face was hidden in shadow, but around his wrist was my grandfather's old black-rimmed bronze luopan, the same luopan that had been buried with him 7 years earlier. The phone was entered into police evidence the following morning. It disappeared from the evidence room the night before forensic examination. No lock had been broken. No camera recorded anyone entering. 3 months later, the forestry survey team found the same device ringing inside the only sealed jar recovered from the flooded valley. I did not go to the Ailao Mountains immediately. For 3 months, I searched burial records. I reopened my grandfather's grave. The coffin had not been disturbed, but the black-rimmed lupan inside was gone. In the final notebook he left behind, I found a page sealed beneath another sheet of paper. On it, he had written, "The second door does not kill the one who crosses it. It removes their place from the memory of the world." And below that, "Heishui does not imprison the dark god. Heishui imprisons the man who watches the dark god."
That is where Qiao Muyu's written statement ends. 3 months later, Qiao Muyu and Jiang Haoran entered the Ailao Mountains. They carried the underground river map, the 17th copper nail, and Haoran's architectural reconstruction. Their expedition was scheduled to last 4 days. They did not return. 6 days after the deadline, Haoran appeared alone at a forest ranger station more than 100 miles from their starting point. His clothing was dry, even though the region had experienced 3 days of rain. He held a burned copper nail in one hand. He could not remember where he had been. But when police showed him Qiao Muyu's photograph, he said her name immediately. Qiao Muyu was declared missing. Then the erasure began. Her university file still contained her photograph, her grades, her signature. But her instructors did not remember teaching her. Her classmates did not remember sitting beside her. Her landlord did not remember renting her a room. The records remained. The memories did not. It was the same imbalance Heishui had used for generations' physical proof on one side, human memory on the other. Only Jiang Haoran remembered. Whether he remembered because he crossed the second door with her, because he carried the 17th copper nail back, or because Qiao had deliberately anchored herself inside his memory remains unknown. He remembered that she tapped twice on a table when danger was near. He remembered that she always carried her compass in the left pocket of her coat. He remembered something she said before they entered Heishui. Land has memory. Every year, on the date Qiao Muyu disappeared, Haoran receives a call from a hidden number. No one speaks. There are only 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. The official report may close the case, but not every file stays silently. Some roads still wait in the dark. Some names are still missing from the record, and some witnesses never truly leave the places they survived. If another file is found, if another voice comes forward, I will open the archive again. Until then, this is Shen Yu, the Raven Archivist, and this file is now closed.